Hey everyone, it's a beautiful Sunday afternoon here in Florida, at least for now. Looks like we may get some rain later, but we've got a great project to work on this afternoon. And you know, I don't know if you've ever seen one of these. I've never seen one. It's a 1950s or possibly earlier Milwaukee impact gun. It's electric, but let's take a look at this thing. All right, so here it is. It's seen some use, let's say. I don't really know what's up with this. It looks like somebody put some paint on it. It doesn't, I don't know. Maybe it's original paint, I don't know. This red, I think, is original. This front piece apparently was red. This part was red. I cannot read the model number, I have tried. But I don't know what this actually says, other than Milwaukee Electric Tool Corp Heavy Duty Impact Wrench. Trigger seems to be in good shape. I don't think that's going to be an issue. This is pretty bad. The strain relief. The cord, I looked through it, other than it's not grounded anymore. The cord doesn't look bad, but until I see what's going on in here, I'm not going to even try it. But I'm very curious to see which direction it goes in. Now that's our mission for today, so let's get busy. All right, so looks like we can inspect the wiring pretty easily right from here. 3 screws. They are Phillips, which is interesting, so that makes me think that we are into the 1950s here. Oh, it's a little rusty in here. It's very dirty. This paper insulator. All right, let's see what we got. All right, we do have a ground right there. So our ground goes here. Our white goes on the outer, and our black goes on the inner. Interesting, see this metal ring here is used to grab the strain relief and hold it in. I wonder if I can save that metal ring. The strain relief's pretty much had it. The cable doesn't look bad, so I think I could have tested it. I guess we'll do a close-up of the switch. The insulation on this, of course, is not the best. You can see on this wire, the hot wire down here, there's really not much to keep it shielded. So we've got to be careful with that when we put new wires on. I don't know if I'm going to need to take the switch out in order to rewire it. It doesn't look like it. This wire inside looks to be in good shape. It's just very dirty. There's a lot. Look at this. Oh, there's a lot of grime, but we'll clean that out. But anyway, that's what we're doing. We're going to rewire this guy. Should be pretty easy. I've got a replacement power cord. Only 6 feet as opposed to whatever that is. But I don't have a real long one right now to use. Okay, well that's interesting. So one of my screws just shot off, and this is probably going to take me a bit to find it. It shot all the way, it shot from the unit past me over there. So I gotta look for it. I'm gonna pause the camera because this is gonna take me a bit. All right, fortunately that wasn't that bad. I did find it pretty quickly. All right, and green goes here. Okay. All right, well, here's our power cord. Let's get this out of the way. I do like this metal ring here. I'd like to think I can kind of reuse that. It's pretty cool. But I think in order to do that, I'm gonna have to cut this insulation and see how to do that. I'll be right back. All right, I got the metal ring. We're now done with this power cord. Hate to waste it because it's a long one. We're gonna use just this. It's 14 gauge. Should be fine. All right, it's way open now, so it should go on pretty easy. All right, and now I'm going to use these to compress it back down and grab it. Hopefully this will work as planned. Hopefully that will fit. Looks like it will. All right, so now we've got to put some terminal rings on these guys. Use very small ones. Okay, so I'm gonna need to customize these because they're a little too wide for the switch. So let me show you what the problem is. So we won't have much of a problem here. That's not difficult, but for the switch. All right, so you see right there, this has got to go in, it's got to fit, and it doesn't. And I don't want to take a chance of it breaking the plastic insulation of this. So not too difficult, I just have to grind a little bit off of this so it'll work. Or I could just use the cable and just wrap it around the screw. But that's not really how these were done. So I'm going to grind this off. All right, so for the ground, we've got it small enough to easily fit on there. bring the crimpers? Yeah, I did. Technically these are red, but with me taking the insulation off this one, kind of tough to say, but it's crimped. So that's the ground. Would be easier if I took this switch out to do this, but I'm a little wary because this is really rusty, and I don't really see how easy this switch will come out. So let me show you a close-up of what I did with these guys. Very simple, actually. Here's a before, and all I did was narrow it down a bit. Pretty simple. So it'll fit in the insulation. Let's make sure I did that right. Yep, fits really well. The reason why I have this on its side, which I know it means you can't really see what I'm doing. I thought I can move the camera. But the reason it's on its side is because I don't want to drop any screws in there. That's better. A little tight. All right, before we do that, let's clean some of this gunk out. All right, to do that, we'll use this. I'm going to use some of this QC electric cleaner. And we'll kind of keep an eye on that to make sure it dries. That's tight. I'm going to use some dry lube on this switch. It's safe for motors. This is not WD-40. This is WD-40 dry lube. All right, let's see if we can get this cover back on. we are tight here. All right, looks like that's all gonna fit. Let's use a wire brush and clean the heads of these 3 screws. You guys are dirty. Pretty clean now, you can see that. All right, got a pretty secure connection there. Dry lube's dry, so we can probably test it and see. All right, let's plug it in, see what it does. All right, so to test it, we've got a switch here. So with all wiring, I mean, I know how I did everything. It looks pretty good, but this is tight in there and compressed. So just in case something went wrong, we're gonna plug it in here first, and then we're gonna turn the switch on. Okay, that's a good sign. Good sign number 1, there's no direct shorts. Number 2, I'm gonna put some rubber gloves on. Not a lot of insulation, but I'm gonna hold it with one hand and I'm gonna push it in and see what it does. Well, it works, and it works clockwise, so it's tightening. Works really well. All right, we'll take that off. We're now wired, and now we get to take a look inside this mechanism. So to do that, it looks like we've got some hex screws. It's kind of an interesting choice. I'm gonna just go with the fact that they're probably not metric. Okay, well, this says that they are 532s hex screws. I guess it's good they're hex screws because they don't want to come off. I would hate to be using this much force if they were Phillips screws or flatheads, because they might strip. That was by far the most difficult. All right, so pulling this off, it may pull the spindle out of the motor, and I don't want to do that. I don't want to have to take the whole motor apart and pop the brushes and all. So I'm going to try to hold this in place. That is, if in fact this thing's going to come off that easily. I'm going to need another screwdriver here. Of course, this is just my belief that this is how this comes apart. My belief is that you grease it in here. And I've never done one of these. That's the fun of this channel, is you get to find out with me. Whoa! That is a rancid smelling old grease box. Whoa. But it looks like it doesn't have any real grease in it. But what grease there is pretty chunky. Looks pretty easy to re-grease this. There's no grease in it. There's almost none. So let me get well, I got a paper towel. And we'll just dig out what grease we can, which is very little. And then we'll re-grease this thing. It's always good to, when you're working on a mechanism like this, to take it apart like at this level, because, oops, my fingers are gonna smell for a week now because I just got this grease on me. Because you get to see not only how it works, but really get to see when the last time this thing had any grease was. If it has been re-greased ever in its life, I really don't know. All right, let me get some grease and we'll fill it. I know you want a close-up of this inner mechanism because it is pretty interesting. Here's the inside. I'll take it out in the sun where you can see it a little bit better. All right. Get that outer gear. And these run on that outer gear. This is clearly the impact portion, the hammer part. Well, I say clearly, but I really don't know. I've never taken an impact gun apart. I'm just totally guessing here. But certainly no drill has that in it. So that's it. That's all we got to do to grease it. I suppose to paint it would be easier to paint this thing just as it is, right like that. Just clean it up, mask this portion of it off, and paint it. That, of course, stops me from putting it back together. But geez, that would save a lot of time, wouldn't it? Let's do that. Let's clean this thing up and then paint it. Probably the easiest way to clean this is just to wire brush the entire thing, because I can wire brush all this old paint off. Yeah, let's try that. All right, so we're getting there. Not much, but see, it's taking it all off. So I don't want to bore you watching this whole thing. So let me continue with this and we'll be back. Okay, we are cleaned up. I just need to take some acetone to it. I've even cleaned up the 1/2" pin. So I just got to take some acetone to it, and then we can prime it and paint it. All right, to get the oil residue off, we're just going to use a regular rag. Clean one though, because I'm sure there's oil residue, so you need to use clean gloves and a clean rag and wipe it all down.
I missed a little white paint there. That's why it's always good to wipe these things down. Let me hit that with the wire brush real quick. Alright, we're just going to use automotive primer. This is aluminum, so we don't need to really worry about rust. Now I suppose I should have taped that up. Alright, let that dry. This back piece is going to be interesting and very difficult to paint. Although it does look like the entire thing was painted, because I see red paint on here too. So maybe it won't be that difficult to paint. I have to cover the brushes. Maybe it comes off, maybe it doesn't. Just pull the gray paint off, which, I mean, I can't imagine this thing was completely painted at one point, but it's possible, I guess. This tag, it's too bad the tag is so worn, but this cap in the back here, if it comes off, we'll have to clean that up because that looks pretty bad. All right, let's get on that. Let's put a rag down here because I don't want to get extra dirt in this thing. And let's see what's behind this. If we take these out. Maybe it's just, yeah, it's okay. This is whole plate. That's good. Good. Okay, so from here, we can clean this up and paint it. But see, we can now access the rear bearing and oil it, which is good. You can see where the brushes go in. So we can spray clean the whole motor like this. Let's clean this thing up. Honestly, it's interesting how that plate was on there. Oh, let's clean it up. We'll just wire brush it, actually. It's quicker that way. I'll be right back. All right, it's mostly cleaned up enough. I'm gonna paint this with hammered black. It does not require primer. Pretty easy to do, and it'll hide like anywhere where the surface is kind of rough. It also seals the rust much better than regular paint will. Okay, for red, I'm going to use the Rust-Oleum High Performance Red. Used it on these Milwaukees before. It's a very bright red. It's concealing, hopefully. This is squirting a lot. But it dries fairly quickly. It's very tough. Responds very well to multiple coats. And it can cover when the can sprays like this one is, which is not good. But I'll handle that by putting multiple coats on. All right, let me let that dry for a minute, and then I'll be back, and I'll probably put 5 or 6 coats on it. I'm sitting here debating the best way to tackle this body, because this I want to polish, but it's got paint on it, like that gray paint there, that I don't think is going to come off too easy, and this I want to paint red. It's the combination of doing the two that gets tricky. It's probably easier for me to polish the whole thing first and just wipe this down after, or steel wool this and then paint it. But in the meantime, there's 50 years of baked on grease here. that I do want to get out and without dropping all over the gears like I just did. Fortunately, we will be re-greasing this. That is really caked on. That will not come off too easily. It almost looks like it's a gasket. That's how tight it is, but it is not. It's just grease. So I'm going to continue cleaning this thing while I debate how to do this. I don't think this is paint, or original paint. I don't think this thing was ever gray. For starters, it's just an ugly color. I think it was polished and that cap was red. And I've seen some that have a black end cap on them, maybe to protect the brushes, but not sure. Either way, I'm going to continue cleaning this thing up and prepping it. Like this gray paint, I don't think this is original. I just can't imagine it was painted such an ugly color. But anyway, I'm going to keep cleaning them up and then we'll be back. Okay, I got a lot of this cleaned up. Not all of the paint is off yet, but most of it. But some of it is real heavy. Like really heavy. It just does not want to come off. I can put a dent in it with a screwdriver, which I don't like to do, but I can't get it off. So I'm going to use a heavier steel wool and WD-40 on this to start. I'm kind of hoping I'll take the rest of this paint off with that, but I don't know. Doesn't look like it's coming off. Alright, just one spot of paint left, right there. I think I've got enough acetone in here to do it. Almost. I got all the paint off, right? Okay. I'm not going to worry about this back piece because I am going to paint that. So takes it off right away. It's pretty good stuff. Alright, I gotta take my gloves off. Leave this thing rub down with a big towel because my gloves are all full of polish. We'll see how it all came out once we take the polish off. pretty good, pretty good. So, all right, we're getting close to reassembling this thing. We got to paint this red. We got to oil our rear bearing. We're going to clean out the motor, and I got to spray all this down because I got steel wool and things like that on it, which is why I usually seal these up before I go do any polishing, because the debris gets inside. But so what I'm going to do is I'm going to use dry lube inside the motor itself. That's right in here. You see it's still pretty dirty, but it'll clean around the brushes and it'll clean the motor. I'll let that run out, and I'll also spray some on here just to get the little fibers off. So I'm going to do that, and I'll be right back. All right, a lot of gunk came out of this thing. A lot. All right, so this is ready to get greased. This is ready to get masked up, painted, and I've got to put some oil in here. So let's mask it up. What do you think? You think I should? Yeah, I guess I gotta paint this red because this part here is red. So the whole back will be red. That's okay. This is tricky in here, so we'll mask up part of this. Gonna be tricky because the tape's not gonna want to stick to anything, but I can't let a bunch of paint get in there either, so we may just stuff it with a rag. It looks like I'm able to do it with tape. As long as I don't go a little crazy with the paint back here. All right. I'm just gonna wrap this in a towel, this whole front, to paint it. I need to come up with a way of holding it up. Maybe something like this would work. Pretty close. Just need something in here to hold this thing so it doesn't tip over. Should do it. All right, I backed the brushes out enough so I could mask them. I didn't take them all the way out. Just gonna put some primer on. Of course, it's getting windy out. It occurs to me that just in using this, because you have to grab this and rotate it to change directions, that in daily use that red paint is going to get worn out. Okay, there's not much I can do for this badge, but what I can do is kind of flatten it out a bit because it's all uneven. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to put it in a vise. I'm going to sandwich it between these two boards and kind of hold it and press it together for a while. Hopefully that holds it flat. Okay, so I've got the rear emblem being pressed. I've pressed it in several different ways. Let me move it again. Okay, I'm pressing it that way. So I'm going to leave that. We're at a point now where I guess I'm going to have to stop for overnight, because this paint looks great, but it really needs more than a day or so to dry. So we're going to let it sit. The whole unit is in that box, and there's the front. I've got the rear cap and the hex head bolts painted, cleaned up and painted and ready to go. So essentially, I've just got to grease it and reassemble it. So that's it for today. I'm just gonna put everything away and we'll reassemble it. I'm probably gonna give it a couple of days. Tomorrow's Monday, so I have to work. So I think I'm gonna give it a few days, but we'll be back soon. I've got all my parts here, including my badge, which I pressed. It's pretty flat, flatter than it was. So I think I'm probably safe with putting it all together. Okay, so the first step will be greasing this thing up. I want to be very careful not to get any grease on the paint. I've also got to get grease on these gears, again, without actually damaging the paint. So first off, I'm going to grease in here directly. Okay, next I'm going to grease the inside of this all the way down inside. There's moving parts way in there, so I'll put some grease in there. And lastly, on these threads here, all right, that should be enough of that. That did it. All the way down. Just put it in place. I don't know why that was right. I'd love to be able to tell you specifically what happened there, why it went correctly that time, but I honestly don't know. Looks like I did a pretty good job of not messing up the paint, which is good. So I'm putting these all in to the point where they're snug. And then I will go back, tighten them up a little bit more, and then I'll finally tighten them. Especially with aluminum casings like this, you don't want to warp them by tightening one screw down too much. Snug there. All right, now I'll do one final tighten. All right, okay, let's lay this thing down and see about getting any overspray off. I'm sure there's got to be some, but we'll see. Actually, geez, virtually none, just a tiny bit right there. Make sure you can still see it. We're going to work on putting the badge on the back now. Well, the badge looks a lot better flattened out like it is. with that, we're done. It's pretty cool. Ready to go to work, I guess. This may have been nicer if I had only painted these ribs, but it turns out that that is not actually the way it was. Because there was red paint all over this end. My black end cap looks good. Oh, I got a little overspray in there. I gotta be careful, I don't want to get any steel wool inside these vents. But yeah, looks great. Let's plug it in and fire it up. Alright, just a little paint in here. It was getting a little hard to turn it. That's all. Reverse. And twist that. Crazy, really crazy. Things that you didn't know existed way back in the day. Right, Muggsy? That is pretty cool. All right, so there you have it. A 1950s, I guess, Milwaukee impact gun. 120 volts. Works great. Looks great. I don't know if I'll use it. I'll be so worried about scratching up my awesome red paint on that thing. It would have almost been easier to use had it never been painted. It had never had any paint on it and it was just cast. But tools are meant to be used. I do have an electric impact gun that I bought when Sears was going out of business a few years ago. And generally I use that, or I use the DeWalt 20 volt if I'm road tripping. But this, you know, it may see some use because it's just such a cool looking tool. And especially if I'm working on a project with somebody and we need an impact wrench and I break that thing out, that'd be pretty cool. So if you like this sort of content, don't forget to like and subscribe and hit the notification bell. I've always got more things like this coming, always more projects. And you know, if you want to take on one of these, not that hard. I would say this is kind of, compared to like a drill, it's a little more complex than that, but not much. You can do it. Just go out, get busy. Take care.